Member for Johnston, speaking to the amendments?
Oh.
Well, yeah.
Oh, speak as in, yes. So reading my speech with the amendments in mind. Is that?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yes, I welcome the amendments. Madam Speaker, I rise today to support this important motion, as it sounds like is supported across the House, calling on the CLP government to fully commit to the $4 billion Aboriginal remote housing program and to ensure that the target of building 2,700 homes over the next 10 years is met. As we've heard, this program is not just about building houses, it's about providing safe, secure homes for Aboriginal families in remote communities who've been ignored for too long. And we know that safe, stable housing is essential for the wellbeing of any community. It impacts everything: health, education, employment, and especially community safety. We know that overcrowded, inadequate and inappropriate housing in remote Aboriginal communities is a major factor contributing to our health crisis, our domestic violence crisis, our safety crisis and our education crisis. Without a safe, appropriate place to live, we put our most vulnerable people at risk. You can't get up and go to school if you're living in an overcrowded and inadequate shelter. Having a safe place to live is a basic human right and a foundation for people to live happy, healthy lives. And if we want to improve safety in these communities, we have to address this housing crisis head on. The NT population comprises around 246,000 people, making up just 1% of the national population. And in contrast, the NT is the third largest jurisdiction in terms of landmass. Almost 50% of our population live outside the Darwin areas across 4 urban towns, 73 remote communities, 394 funded homelands of the 632 registered homelands and 43 town camps. And so the target of 2,700 houses is ambitious, but it's necessary. We know that here in the Territory our housing needs are at crisis level and we are experiencing the highest levels of housing disadvantage and homelessness in the country. Homelessness in the NT is 12 times the national average, and 87% of people experiencing homelessness in the Territory are Aboriginal. Over half of all our homes across our remote communities are experiencing severe overcrowding, according to the ABS. A staggering 98% of people who are living in overcrowded houses are Aboriginal Territorians. And overcrowding itself is a form of homelessness and has significant negative impacts on people. Impacts include things like a lack of privacy, increased noise levels and stress, health and wellbeing concerns, and food insecurity. It makes it hard for kids, as I said, who are at school, and places extreme strain on families. Many of us in this chamber can't begin to imagine what it's like living in a severely overcrowded home and just how difficult it is. So access to appropriate housing is critical to addressing inequality and disadvantage. And we know this significantly addresses key social determinants and helps provide life-changing opportunities for people. And while supply is our number one housing issue, it's critically important to remember we also need different types of housing and appropriate housing to support Aboriginal Territorians across regional and remote territory. Here in the Territory, we also desperately need short-stay accommodation options for Aboriginal people. And as part of that, we need to make sure that our Aboriginal community-controlled sector manages the accommodation and provides the property and tenancy services. Aboriginal people and organisations are best placed to manage Aboriginal tenancies and help keep people safe in tenancies and not fall into homelessness. And we also urgently need crisis and short-stay accommodation options for women and children across all of our regions. This is not just about putting a roof over people's heads. This is about giving families the stability they need to escape cycles of violence and instability. We can't have a thriving community if people are living in overcrowded homes or houses that are falling apart. We know that we need better outcomes in terms of safety, mental health and community cohesion, and this is what secure, quality housing will contribute to. A key component of the remote housing investment is also the focus on growing the Aboriginal community-controlled housing sector. Community control refers to the principle that Aboriginal people and communities have the right to participate in decision-making that affects their lives, such as housing, health and wellbeing. Aboriginal community-controlled organisations, ACCOs, often achieve better quality of service provision, employ more Aboriginal people, and are often preferred over mainstream services, especially across communities, homelands and town camps. The anti-Aboriginal community-controlled sector is characterised by smaller not-for-profit organisations, and it's driven by local people who are highly knowledgeable and passionate about serving their communities. Aboriginal community-controlled organisations in the NT often provide wraparound and integrated services to their housing clients and operate as multi-service organisations. So these services often include housing, infrastructure repairs and maintenance, primary healthcare and aged care programs, land and sea ranger programs, and construction and civil works. The Aboriginal community-controlled sector generates local jobs, and it's the lifeblood across the Territory's remote communities and homelands. Building a strong Aboriginal community-controlled housing sector is also the agreed Priority Reform 2 commitment from the federal, state and territory governments under the National Agreement on Closing the Gap. And we know that growing the Aboriginal community-controlled sector also builds remote economies, which provides employment opportunities for Aboriginal people within their communities and their homelands. I just want to talk a little bit about homelands. While estimates vary between 6,000 and 10,000 people living across homelands in the Northern Territory, homelands in the Northern Territory have not seen any new housing since at least 2015. And as the country tries to deal with the national housing crisis, Aboriginal families across Northern Territory homelands have been living in a silent and largely invisible housing crisis for almost a decade. Up until 2015, homelands remained the responsibility of the Commonwealth, with all funding for new housing and repairs and maintenance on homelands provided by the Australian Government. And in 2015, the Northern Territory Government agreed to take on full responsibility for the delivery of repairs and maintenance and municipal and essential services to homelands, in exchange for a $155 million cash payment of the remaining municipal and essential services component of Stronger Futures. This saw the Commonwealth relinquish all responsibility for homelands, while the Northern Territory took full responsibility for homelands repairs and maintenance and essential services only. And as I said, the NT Government has not constructed any new housing on homelands since 2015. The housing that does exist on homelands is often dilapidated. Housings are energy inefficient hot boxes in the desert, and many are rusting out and in many cases beyond economic repair. That is, the houses are too expensive to repair and would be cheaper to knock down and rebuild. As part of the recent investment into remote housing in the Northern Territory, the Australian and NT governments have agreed to provide match funding of $40 million each per annum until 2026-27 for housing repairs and maintenance, municipal and essential services and capital infrastructure on homelands. And this is a welcome and desperately needed investment into the Territory's homelands. However, if the NT Government is serious about creating a safer community for all citizens, it must commit to also investing in new housing on homelands. So that's why this motion, which it sounds like we're all supporting, calls for the full support of the Joint Steering Committee for Remote Housing Northern Territory. And as this committee includes representatives from the NT and Australian governments, the 4 land councils and Aboriginal Housing NT, the Territory's Aboriginal Housing peak body, who represent the Aboriginal community-controlled sector, who the Minister for Housing referred to. I was also lucky enough to meet with them and get a good understanding of the work that they're doing. They know their communities better than anyone else, and any changes to this agreement should only happen with their full support. We've seen what happens when we make decisions without the involvement of those who will be directly affected by them, the people who know what they need and what will work for their communities. Madam Speaker, this motion is not just about building houses, it's about addressing the broader issues of justice, health, education and employment. We can't continue to let this gap in housing and safety persist. By investing in the Aboriginal community-controlled sector, this program is creating opportunities to begin to fix the housing inequity that exists across the Territory and create lasting change for these communities. We need to ensure that these houses are built with Aboriginal say in design and construction, with genuine commitment to build for cultural realities, to prepare for a hotter climate and to support healthy living across generations, and to do that by ensuring that this program is fully implemented. This isn't just policy, it's about doing what's right for the people of the Northern Territory. Safe homes lead to safer communities, better opportunities and a more just society for all of us. So I'm happy to see that here that the CLP is in support of this motion to the full implementation of this $4 billion 10-year program to meet the housing target of 2,700 houses across the 73 remote communities and to ensure that the Joint Steering Committee is fully engaged in any changes to the agreement. And I also urge the CLP government to commit to reinvesting in new housing on homelands and to work with the Aboriginal community controlled sector to construct and deliver these new houses. The time to act on this is now. Thank you, Madam Speaker.